Welcome to your Farm and Home Show. My name is Joanna Coles, and today we're visiting with Dr. Katie VanValin. She's with the University of Kentucky Beef Extension Specialist there.
Yeah, so when we think about those first calf heifers, a lot of times you'll hear people say or you'll read in articles about selecting heifers that can rough it on fewer inputs and just get by, and that they're going to be a more efficient cow. And the idea behind that is a little bit flawed because that heifer is not a cow. And I say that all the time, and that sounds so simple, but it is so true. She has a whole different set of nutrient requirements than those mature cows. So yeah, she's going to require a little extra input up front, but once she reaches to become that mature cow, and hopefully after she's had that first calf, she gets bred back and stays in the herd and becomes that mature cow, now all of a sudden she will probably fall in line with the rest of the herd. But if we try to get those first calf heifers to rough it along with our mature cows, a lot of times we end up underfeeding them, and probably the most overculled animal on a beef operation is that first calf heifer that didn't breed back. So we do need to pay a little more attention to them because they need a little extra nutrition in that first period, and that's really because they're still growing.
We talk about numbers every time you pick up a magazine talking about numbers, and we're probably starting to see some herd expansion. So people are thinking about keeping back some more replacement heifers. And so, what, I guess, advice would you give to them, or maybe some tips to really focus on the nutrition of those heifers?
The easiest thing, and I say it's easy, I know in reality it may not be, is to manage them separately from the mature cow herd. Really allow them to be fed at a higher plane of nutrition. So that might mean a little extra supplementation. If we've tested our forages, we're going to feed maybe our higher quality forages to those, particular heifers. And really manage them separately from that cow herd until they've weaned that first calf and they've been bred back, and then they can fall in with the rest of the herd. But if we'll manage them separately, and another trick I like to kind of throw out to producers is if we've got thin mature cows that need to add some condition, we could put them in with that group as well, because they're also needing a higher level of nutrition than our cows that are in adequate condition and aren't too thin. So, because if we think about, vegetative grass, a lot of times, that can meet their nutritional requirements pretty well. But when we get into the winter and we're looking at typical grass hay, it's just not got enough energy there. A lot of times we might get close on protein, but energy, we just don't have enough of it there in a hay to meet those needs. And so we're going to have to supplement with a little bit of energy, something like soy hulls or even a commodity mix. A lot of our feed companies have good commodity mixes that are readily available, that can supply that extra nutrition. Unfortunately, at least for right now, our knowledge as far as mineral requirements in cattle, we don't really have enough to say that a heifer needs a different mineral than a cow. So as long as we have got a good complete mineral, whether that is, most often that's a free choice mineral, or if we are feeding those heifers a commodity mix, we could get that mineral mixed in. And make sure that they're, in every mouthful, they're getting some mineral. But for most folks, a free choice mineral that we put out in a covered feeder will do the trick. The UK mineral recommendations are published online. Those are readily available. You don't have to purchase that exact mineral because there's a lot of feed mills around the state that mix that. But you can use that kind of as a starting point to selecting a good mineral. So if you get something that can kind of meet or exceed what's on that recommendation list, then that's a pretty good way of knowing whether or not you've got a good mineral out there for your cattle. We get a little bit worried about maybe some dystocia issues or things like that when they get too fat. But honestly, I don't get as concerned about those over-conditioned heifers as I do the under-conditioned ones. We might be able to dial it back a little bit and rein it back in, as from a nutritional standpoint, if we do see them getting over-conditioned. But, the other thing to keep in mind is once they've had that first calf, they start producing that milk, they're going to lose condition pretty quickly. So I caution folks to get too aggressive there. And it just goes back to having a close eye on those heifers. And that's also why having them separate from the rest of the herd can make it a little bit easier to kind of keep a good, easy, quick eye on those animals.
We appreciate you watching the Farm and Home Show and hope you have a great day.